All right. Well, thanks for joining us today on this this brief webinar, this Lunch and Learn on RenovoFYI. This is a financial report writer, and it's a pretty unique financial report writer in that it's a web-based application, and it's designed to do your financial statements, income statements, balance sheet, and cash flow, and that type of reporting out of the general ledger. A little bit about the company. We're just going to do a couple of slides, and I really wanted to spend the hour in the product itself. But Renovo Corporation is a division of a company called Flexi International Software, and Flexi is a general ledger, ARAP, fixed assets ERP system that used FRX as its primary report writer for all of its users worldwide. And when FRX was announced, or when Microsoft, I should say, announced the sunsetting of FRX, Flexi looked for a replacement solution for all of its customers. And it didn't find anything on the marketplace that existed that was appropriate for its base. So it developed this report writer called RenovoFYI. And as you know, at the end of this year, or end of last year, and beginning of this year, the official support for FRX from the publisher is no longer. Really what to take away from this is that when you look at this product, you're going to see that it was designed from the ground up with the FRX users in mind to be a replacement solution for those people. In the meantime, we've, over the last couple of years, really have rolled this product out to people beyond the Flexi world into all different general ledger packages and just a broad range of different users because everybody really needs financial reporting. I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of the key features that differentiate this product, and then we'll go into look at the actual product demonstration itself. But these are some of the things that we have seen that we feel make us different. So one is the ability to convert. If you're using FRX today, we have a utility that will convert all of your existing reports from FRX into RenovoFYI. It takes all of your settings, all of your rows, all of your columns, all your trees, your font styles, your count sets, all of the settings, your report options, and it converts them from FRX directly into RenovoFYI. It's easy and it's painless, and I'll show you an example of that probably at the end of this webinar. It really allows you to get up and running very quickly at a very low cost as well, because you don't have to rewrite, either spend the time to rewrite yourself or pay somebody to rewrite all of your reports. So when our customers evaluated the total cost of switching from FRX to something else, when you factor in the cost it takes to rewrite all of your reports, you'll find that Renovo comes out as a very affordable option. And it really gets you just up and running very quickly. No muss, no fuss. Okay, so we'll take a look at that later. The second thing is the design concepts are very familiar to people that have used FRX because we've kept intact a lot of the same functionality and way of doing things. So for example, we continue to use the component-based report design concepts of rows, columns, and something very similar to trees we call organizations. Okay? And so what we found is that people that have moved from FRX to Renovo, they learn the product very quickly. It's not a steep learning curve for our users and our partners to transition to this product. And so they come out of it much further ahead than if they were to try to learn a brand new report writer. The third bullet here, or bubble here, is really around the technology and the interface for the end user. It's a browser-based application, meaning that you interact with the application through a web browser. So it's not an Excel-based report writer. It's not a client-server application either, like FRX. This is a browser-based application. Now, it is still installed on premises. It's still installed on your server until later this year when we roll out our cloud offering. But the point is that you can access it through a browser, which means you don't have to install anything on your local machines. All right, you don't have to install add-ins or applications. It's also just a more modern technology in that it has a SQL server on the back end. It makes your processing much faster. So when people have compared our report writer to others, one of the big things is performance. Performance they've found is much greater, and our partners recommend us for people where that's important. Another area around technology in the application where we're different, or we feel we have an advantage, is around security. So because, for one, it's not an Excel-based product, nobody can go in and just change a report or change a formula. It's much more secure in that regard. In addition, it has a lot of security wrapped around the application itself, so that when you log in to use the application, you cannot, you can only do what the administrator allows you to do. So there's role-based security. It's all tied to LDAP, your Windows user, for example. And it can be at a very detailed level. You can control who can see what row or what report, or who can run reports, who cannot. So it's very strong in that regard. And finally, there's security and authorization around viewing reports, so that you can create a report and you can control who can see what level of a particular report. Okay, so a lot of security as well. Last is around distribution. So this fourth bullet really is with regards to distributing reports in an automated fashion. So I've talked a little bit about conversion and design similarities. Anytime you migrate from one application to another, you want to gain some functionality, and the technology, you're going to see huge gains there, and the performance, and then also around distribution. So with the application, you get the ability to distribute reports automatically, bursting them out to various departmental managers, for example, and it will automate that whole process so that you don't have to individually slice up a report and email them out. So you can distribute it, via email and PDF or Excel with full authorization control. And in addition, on top of that, what we offer, because this is a web-based application, is the ability for your users to proactively view the reports online. So you can distribute them just a hyperlink that they can click on, and it will take them to the reports online. So you're not actually emailing files around, which is a little less secure. You email them a link, and they click on it, and then they log in through the web, and they can view the reports online and drill down on them. So that's an added benefit to this architecture. And the other thing is with the distribution functionality, it comes with the base package, so you don't have to purchase anything in addition to be able to do all this. All right, I'm going to stop there with the PowerPoints, really, and I'm going to show you guys the application itself. So this is the login screen for RenovoFYI, and what we'll do is we'll just put in the username and password. And again, this username and password can be tied to your Windows IDs, so it knows that you can use the same username and password and email address. It makes the maintenance of the security much easier. Once you're logged in, the system security will determine what you can and cannot see and what you can and cannot do. So depending upon the different types of users, and we're not going to really talk about the specifics of different types of users, but there are different license types with different user types that can do different things. Authors can develop physical reports. They can design and edit reports and their different rows and columns, etc. The publisher type of license has the ability to run and schedule and distribute individual reports or packages of reports. So you can bundle reports into packages and run them all at once. The third type of licensed user is a viewer. And the viewer, they really can only just come in here and view the reports online and drill down on them. They can't run or they can't edit reports. And one interesting thing about the viewing is that when you run a report in Renovo, it stores it in a central repository. And then the users can organize and file their reports away into these online folders. So it creates like a repository of all your historical reports in these online folders for you. So you can always go back and look at reports that you ran before without having to ask somebody to rerun it for you. All right? So it's a nice way to organize all your historicals. We'll just take a look at a couple of examples here. So if we come down here to the training reports, we'll just look at some standard financials like a balance sheet in this kind of current year, prior year format, or the same balance sheet in a different column layout here where we've got this kind of tabular format, or a balance sheet in a consolidated view where we've got multiple companies consolidating into a summary level. And here you can see these companies side by side as well. So just some different ways of producing the reports and changing around the rows and the columns and the organizations. This particular report is interesting because it's a consolidation of multiple companies, which is another kind of differentiator with our product. It's just the ease of doing multi-company consolidations is something that Renovo is really good at. And this example takes it another step further. These two companies, ABC and SOA, you can see in the columns, these are actually two different companies in two different general ledger packages with two different chart of account structures. Okay, so we have clients who have multiple companies, and their companies, maybe they acquired them, or maybe they're just different types of companies. So they have different structured chart of accounts. Some have a 3-digit account code and a 2-digit department, and then the next company might have a 5-digit account code, and they track region and product. And they want to be able to consolidate them all into one financial report. This is something that Renovo does really well, is multi-company consolidations, even across disparate systems and disparate chart of account structures. Okay, got another client who they have multiple GLs. They have a Mass 500, they have Microsoft Dynamics, they're running Elite, and on different companies, and they want to pull it all and consolidate it into one report. So that's something that we can do. Let's take a look at some other examples. So we do run across multiple GLs, of course. These are just some different income statements, I guess we'll look at. So this is an example of it's just a standard kind of summarized income statement, but with the columns going across being a percentage of revenue or percentage of expense. That's a special feature within the product to do. This is another income statement with the same row layout, but here now we're using different columns going across the top. This is a 12-month kind of trended report. So one of the strengths of FRX and also Renovo is this component-based report design where you can mix and match different row layouts with different column layouts to produce different looking reports without having to recreate the wheel every time. Let's look at another example. So this is, again, the same row, but a different column. In this case, we're doing a forecast report where we've got actuals pulling from Mass 90, and I've got forecasted budgets coming from Excel. This is a really critical feature for a lot of our people coming off of FRX, which is the ability to pull from both the general ledger and an Excel worksheet into a single report. Common applications would be for forecasting or for pulling statistical data. This particular report also has what we call this kind of rolling forecast function where depending upon the month that you run the report, it will change what displays in the columns. So for example, if I run it for March, I get actuals up through March and forecasts going forward. If I ran it for April, I would get actuals from the GL up to April, and I would get forecasts from Excel from May going forward. So it prevents me from having to each month go in and edit any of the reports. I just go in and I run it depending on which period I'm in, and the report will change depending upon depending on what period you're in. Another common layout would be kind of a comparative or side-by-side. That's not it. Let's look at a side-by-side example where you're putting maybe departments or companies across the top. It's really easy to do in this application. And another example, very, very common, would be the actual versus budget type of report income statement. So here again, we're reusing the same row. We've got actuals for the current month, budget, and variance in dollars and percentages. And then the same thing repeated over here to the right, but year to date. So a pretty standard kind of income statement type of reporting. So let's take a look at how you, when you're viewing a report in Renovo, kind of get around and navigate it. So here on the left, you've got this reporting tree, or what we call an organization. And it allows the users to, if they have access, click on what they want to, what perspective they want to see the report in. So I want to see the income statement for company 1, the operations company. Or maybe I want to go down and see it for company 2, my holding company. So just click on the company that you want to see the report for. Or if you want to come down, you want to see it at a departmental level, I just click on the department that I'm curious about. I want to see the P&L for executives, or the P&L for administration, etc. So the users can navigate the tree over here on the left. They can also drill down into the detail, into the body of the report. So if you were looking at this at a consolidated level, and you wanted to see your salaries, say, by company, you just click on what you're curious about. So here I'm looking at my salaries by company, and then I want to see the company by department. I just point and click, and it's really intuitive and easy to use. So here's by department, and you can keep drilling down, say by region, or however you have your reporting tree structured. The idea here is just it's super easy to use. You don't have to know how to create a pivot table or drag and drop anything. It's just point and click. Now here you can see we've drilled down from a summary level down to the account balances. So these are the different GL accounts that make up that summarized figure. So you can drill down to the accounts, and you can drill down by clicking on a particular account balance down to the GL transactional detail as well. All right, so these are the individual journal entries from, in this case, Mass 9 or Stage 100. So just very intuitively, it's really easy to drill down from a summary level down to the transactional detail when viewing reports in RenovoFYI. There's some other options up here, like for example, if I wanted to export this report out to PDF or Excel, it's really easy. Just click that button to do things like that. You also have things like Hoc Distribution, which we'll cover later, which is how I can burst this report out with just clicking this button, essentially, to all these different departmental managers, and they would only get their slice of the report. Okay, so that's the navigation. What we're going to do now is I'm going to take you from the finished report to the design of this report and how these reports are set up. So in order to do that, you need to have an author license, and you click on this Develop Fiscal Reports menu. And this is where the designers or the authors can go to set up reports, rows, etc. And a lot of these components up here have very similar or one-to-one relationships back to FRX, which makes the conversion very accurate because it's really straightforward. So for example, the reports, this is your report catalog, if you will. It has all the report definitions. Your rows are similar to rows in FRX, and columns convert over as columns. Trees come over as organizations. All right, so those are the building blocks for the report: a row, a column, and an organization. The account collection, that's much like an account set, and that actually converts as well. Participants, distribution lists, and packages, these relate to distributing reports out, and we will talk about those later. And presentation styles, those are the font styles. That's kind of your fonts and bold, underline, font style, etc. You've got an audit components option. This is really handy for when you're designing reports and maybe somebody adds a chart account to the chart of accounts and somebody forgets to add it to the report. Well, this audit function will scan your design and look for things like missing accounts or duplicate accounts. So if I added account 425 to the GL, but I didn't add to the report, I can get this quick look and I can see, hey, that account's not being used in the report. So we can go in and add the returns and allowances to our income statement. So let's take a look at that report that we were drilling down on before. It's this income statement demo report. When you click on that, it opens up this report definition screen here. And this is where you define the report. So this is where a designer or an author would go to set it up. So first they can give the report a name and a description. And then they would assign what row layout and column combination form the body of the report, and what organizational structure or tree, if you will, forms that hierarchy or roll-up structure. There's other settings like the default run date and the drill down levels that are available. And then there's other tabs of additional functions, like, for example, report options for handling negatives and rounding and suppression of rows with no amounts and including amounts in future periods, and these types of kind of both things for formatting your report and more accounting specific or financial specific reporting options. In addition, you get this preview option, which is really convenient. It allows you to preview your report design prior to running it. So if I wanted to change a column width, or I wanted to add a line or add a column, I can see what it's going to look like in my report without actually having to go through the steps of running the report itself. So this is what we call the report definition. It's synonymous with a report catalog, if you will, in FRX. If we dive a little bit deeper, though, and we go into the row definition, this is how you set up the row side of the report. Okay? So in this example, this is a pretty simple income statement where I've got a revenue section up here, and I've got expenses down here. And just to walk you through it, the first line is you get a row code, that's a numbering scheme. It's going to be a description of revenue. And the row type is a description type. It's the same thing as the DES type in FRX. It's just going to print a header, essentially. The next line, row 110, is going to print sales. But this time, we're going to pull a value from the general ledger. And we're going to pull the balance for account 400, which is my sales account. So that's kind of how this is generally set up. We've got other things like calculations for doing subtotals and formulas. And there's a lot of other functions as well. If I wanted to insert that missing account, though, it's really simple. I just highlight and I right-click, and I can insert a line above. So I want to insert above. Just click on that. And then we're going to give it a description. So we'll say returns and allowances. That will appear in the report. And we're going to say, what type of row is it? Well, we want to pull value from the general ledger. And what account do you want to pull? Okay, so you can type it in, or you can do a lookup. And this lookup will look up into your chart of accounts. So you can use this build GL link to do all kinds of complex filtering. So I'm just going to do a simple one first. We're going to look up into our chart of accounts and select from a list that automatically populates from your chart of accounts in Mass 90. And we'll say, okay, we want account 425. Now, there's a lot more that you can do here, and it makes it really easy with this Build GL Link window to do more complex types of settings. So let's say you wanted a range. Okay, a simple range. Let's say 425 to 475. Really easy, from and to. What if we wanted to exclude something from that range? Let's say returns and allowances doesn't include account 450. Well, you change this action over here to remove. We want to remove from our range account 450. You can do things like wildcards as well. So if I wanted to also include anything that starts with a 48, we'll put a 48 asterisk in there. All right. You can even filter down to things like the department level or the regional level in these boxes. So it's kind of just a very user-friendly way of creating your filter on that row in terms of what accounts you want to pull. It comes out looking like that. All right, and for our intents and purposes, we're just going to, there's only really data in 425 anyway, so we're just going to delete that down and give us 425. Now, if you're coming off of FRX, this, a lot of this is just academic because your reports will convert exactly the way they are. The rows will convert into these rows, and you won't have to rewrite anything. But this is useful to know for when you do need to edit a report, how you do it. If you are creating reports from scratch, though, it's also really easy to just cut and paste stuff in from Excel, because all this works like a grid. So if you've got something in Excel and you want to just copy it and paste it right in here to get you kind of a layout, it's really simple to do. So I'm going to save that. We're going to go back to our report definition. And I want to hit the preview button here. What you'll see is the row that we just added, returns and allowances, is right there. And these are just dummy numbers. It doesn't really put in any numbers. It's just giving you an idea what the report's going to look like. So let me go back to that preview again. So we added this row, and now I'm going to show you just the columns. Okay. So in this report, if you recall, we've got a current month actual, budget, dollar variance, and percent variance. And then we have the same thing repeated over here to the right, which is year-to-date actuals, year-to-date budget, variance, and percent variance. Okay. So these are the columns we're going to look at. So I click on this column definition link, and that will take us to where you set up the columns. And here you can see the first column is a description. That's just going to print the descriptions of the lines. Then we've got your current month actuals, budget, and variances. So the first one is actuals for the current year, current period, and it's period to date. And then here we've got budget. My budget is called original. And then here we've got this calculation for my variance, the column C minus column B. Pretty simple formula. And this one is a percent variance of D divided by C. Okay? And that's the same thing over here repeated, but here you can see this year-to-date option. It's really easy to do. This is another way of looking at it. If I right-click here and I go to Edit, you get this nice little tabbed window for you to set up your columns or edit your columns. So if I wanted to toggle the book from actual to budget, or if I wanted to change, fix the year or period, you can put it in here. And you can do things like relative ranges or offsets. For example, if I put -1 in the period offset, then that's going to just tell me to do the prior period or prior year, or however you want to set it up. And you can do fixed periods. So if you wanted to do 12 months, you could do 12, 01 through 12. You do ranges of periods. This is useful for like quarter to date reporting. So that's generally how you do it. Now there's a lot of other options up here for formatting, like your width and your format and your font style. Some other additional options for things like hiding columns and printing them based on certain conditions. And you've got filtering as well. And this is actually pretty powerful stuff. This allows you to filter your columns down by particular, maybe departments or companies. So if you wanted companies or departments going across the top, you can use this filter and use your reporting tree to filter down what appears in the column. It's really useful. All right. That's the general setting for like an actuals column. These variance columns are simply calculations. And one of the cool things with Renovo is you've got this change variance sign function. So Renovo is a financial statement report writer. So we try to be conscious of a lot of situations that come up when you're doing financials. And one common one is when you do a income statement and you're doing a variance column and you want the variance calculations to show a positive as favorable and a negative as unfavorable. But obviously the issue with income statements is that your revenue side versus your expense side have different natural signs. So this change variance sign solves that issue. And you do have a similar function in FRX. Some people are not aware of. It's called the, I think, XCR. What this does is it basically flips the signs so that on your revenue side, so that you have a consistent variance column in terms of favorable and unfavorable balances, positive or negative. Okay, this is just one example of the many features within RenovoFYI that are very financial reporting specific, because this is designed to do that type of thing. So we're not just giving you a blank canvas and saying create your reports. We're putting a lot of check boxes and features and stuff like that that people run into all the time when they're trying to define financials. Okay, so that's your row and your column. The last component that you can use is this organizational structure. And this will define the different levels or the hierarchy or the roll-up structure or the reporting tree. This is, all kind of similar words for the same thing. And what we call is we call it the organizational structure. So if you were to look at this breakdown here, if we just expand some of this down, let's say administration and then east, west. So what you have here is these blue folders. These are summarized levels. And as you start expanding it down, you'll get down to these detailed levels represented by this blue and green figurine icon thingies. Okay, so these are what we call the children levels. These are kind of parent levels. And you define the children very similar to what you would have in FRX with this masking. This masks the chart of account structure. For example, these @ symbols are wildcards on the natural account. And what a lot of people are used to seeing in FRX will be ampersands instead of what we use. We use @ symbols. It's the same thing, though. Okay. Then this company has a 2-digit division. In this case, administration is 01. And then it has a 2-digit location. 01 being east, 02 here is west, 04 is corporate, etc. So you just mask your different levels of your organization this way. That's how you define it. And so now you'll be able to, when you run this report, see this report at all these different levels of detail and roll-up and consolidation. So those are the 3 main components. Now, there's one thing that you get, or there's many things that you get, but one thing I'll point out with the organizational structure that that you also have is the ability to control the distribution of the report based on a level within the reporting tree. So for example, if I wanted to control who can see the executive level or who gets that report and who gets the administration P&L, what you do is you can assign distribution lists to these levels, okay? So I actually have some already defined, so I'm going to use this lookup, and we'll just expand kind of our different groupings here. And I've got a distribution list called administration, okay? And what we're going to do, is we're going to select administration, and anybody that's in the administration group will now actually I put that on the wrong level, so let's change that. We want to put the executive group. Anybody that's in the executive group will have access and receive distribution of this level of the report. And let's say we wanted to define something similar for a different group of people. Those that are in the admin department will receive and have access to only the administration level of the report. Okay? So these distribution lists represent groups of people, and by placing them on the reporting tree or in the organization, I control the distribution and the access. One of the differences between how we do it and other people do it is that we manage things at a group level, so that if I'm in the administration group today or yesterday, and then I moved from the administration group into the executive group, well, I don't have to edit any of the reports. I just take that user out of administration, which is on a different screen, but you just move them out of one group and put them in a different group, and then when you run the reports, it will reflect your organizational change. Okay. So it's just easier to manage going forward as people move around and new groups are formed. All right, what we're going to do here is I'm going to run this report for us. So I'm going to just click this Submit Report. We're just going to run this individual report, but as I mentioned before, you can package reports into groups, and you can run them as a whole, and you can even schedule it all to happen, and I'll show you that in a couple seconds. When you run a report in Renovo, it simply walks the users through a wizard. So the first thing that I did was I picked the date for the report, and then I'm going to pick what levels or what units in my organization I want to run the report for, and I'm just going to select everything. We go next. The next step is an optional step where I can control the distribution of the report. So if I want this to automatically burst and distribute based on those the administration and executive distribution lists, those groups I defined, I would have that box checked. And I would also check this box if I wanted it to send emails to these people, letting them know the report's ready. And I can also attach their report in a PDF or Excel format. Click Next. The next step here is a scheduling option. So if you wanted to schedule this to happen automatically, say every day or a week or a month, you just set up a schedule and you don't have to worry about it anymore. It's just going to automatically generate for you. We're just going to run it once, and we'll submit the report. So now what's happening is it's going through all the different units of the organization, and it's running the report. Well, it's finished running the report, I should say. It was running the report on these different servers. Okay, so you actually get boosted performance because it's not doing anything on your local workstation. It's actually just running the report out on a more powerful server, so that you don't bog down what you're currently doing, and the reports tend to run much faster. So here's the report that we just edited. We added just this simple line, returns and allowances, and of course you can immediately just click on it and drill down into the detail. And there's not much detail, but it's all that's there. Okay. And that's kind of how you edit the reports and then run them. So I'm going to go out here to my email, and I just received this email. So it just came just now. And this is, I'm going to show you now kind of the report distribution and getting reports out to people. Now, we had it actually produce this distribution when we ran it, but most people will actually not do it that way. They'll actually run the report until it's a few times until it's ready to distribute, and then they'll just click this button and it will just and distribute it out. And when they distribute it out, your end users can get an email like this saying, hey, your report's ready. I've included an attachment of the report in PDF. And you can see here, you see the heading here, administration. This user, this person, or this what we call participant, is only receiving their department's financials in PDF. They're not seeing the other departments. Okay, so one person is getting the administration report, and another person. Let me see if I've got another email here. This is a different email, and you see that this is a different person that's getting the executive level of the report. So that's how those distribution lists work in practice. If you're distributing reports out, one of the cool things is, or I guess not cool things, one of the nice things is, if you just want to get people reports out in PDF or Excel, it doesn't cost anything extra. You don't have to buy any additional users or modules. It just comes free. So that being said, if you wanted to take it a step further and you wanted them to, instead of getting just an attachment, you want them to be able to log in and view the reports online, then you have this additional option. And this does require a viewer license. But if I log in as a user that is part of one of those distribution lists, okay, and I come out here and I go to my view reports and I pick the report that was just run, so it will appear in my unfiled folder. And what you'll notice is these red X's, which means I'm restricted from viewing those other departments. but I do have access to my department, the administration. But a different user, if we log out, we log in as somebody else who's part of the executive group, and they go in and they look at that exact same report that was run. Okay, so you as the report manager just ran this one report for everybody. But this user, when he logs in, he is restricted to only being able to see his department and drill down on his department, right? So that's how that distribution controls the access and the distribution of the reports for different, different groups of users. All right, the last thing that I want to show you guys before we conclude is the conversion of reports from FRX for any of you that that may find this useful. All right, so let's do this. Let me just maximize this thing. Okay, so the first thing, when we take a customer from FRX to Renovo, there's a couple different steps. The first thing that we would do is we would install RenovoFYI in your environment, okay, on your server. Let me just log in here real quick. So this is an installation of RenovoFYI, and I'm just going to log in. This is a blank installation. There are no reports, there's no rows, there's no columns or anything like that. Otherwise, you'd see kind of plus marks here. So the first thing we do is we install a blank installation. Then you would come out to your FRX, and we would recommend that you go in and clean up anything that you don't want anymore, because the conversion utility is going to converge just about everything. All right, so this is an example in FRX. This is a catalog of 40 or so reports. And if we look at just one of these, for example, this income statement, so still in FRX, if you look at like the row or the column, or this is an example that will convert. Okay, so this is a row definition, but just to give you an idea of what the reports look like. Okay, so once you've done a little bit of cleanup, if you want to, then you send us a copy of your FRX backups, basically, and we run it through a utility. So what we'll do is we'll pick up your FRX backup, and we'll load it into our utility. And we'll select the spec set and the companies that you tell us you want to convert. And then we will just convert them using this utility. Okay? And this utility will go in, and we can do this on your server or on ours. And you can see here it's going through all the different FRX things. It's going through your row definitions and your presentation styles and the detail and the trees and the columns. It's converting all of them. So there was 40 reports. There was 44 row definitions and 30 columns and 17 trees, etc. So now if we kind of refresh this, what you'll notice is under here, you've got these folders. So this will show you this is converted from, and we just click on that. These are all the reports that were converted in from FRX. So it's got the reports, it's got all the rows, it'll have all the columns, and all of the trees. And if we go look at that same report that I showed you before, here's this income statement. And this is the same thing as like the catalog, showing you, all the reports and the rows and the columns and the et cetera. So this is the same thing, converted. And what we'll do is, I guess we can just run this. Let's just run this report. I'll just mark everything. Okay, let's take a look at it. So this is that report raw, converted from FRX with really nothing, no cleanup or anything done. And you can see there's a tree and the row and the column, and you can even drill down, just by clicking on report into the detail. So this is just to show you what an example of the conversion process is in terms of, installing the software, converting the reports, and then this is just an example of, validating. You would compare this report to the original and make sure everything looks exactly the same. But what you can see here, hopefully, is that the conversion process is very quick. It's very painless. There's no rewriting of all of the reports. All right, and so we want, it's very inconvenient for a lot of people who are being forced off of a report writer that has worked for the last 20 years just fine. And so we want to make it as easy for you to transition to something else that's very similar. It's not going to have a huge learning curve, and you can get up and running very quickly and kind of just get on with your life. So that's one of our goals at RenovoFYI with this conversion capability. And really nobody can do it as quickly and comprehensively and accurately as we can. So we've looked at a couple of things in this webinar. We've looked at, designing reports, viewing them, drilling down on them, running them, distributing them, security, and conversion. And I hope that this was a good introduction to RenovoFYI as a viable solution for anybody that's looking for a replacement for FRX or even not. Just a very solid financial report writer. And that's really our goal, is to be the best financial reporting solution on the marketplace.